Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Rise, hosted by yours truly, Mike Avelli. Today, I've got a great, amazing guest, Jake Vorhees. Hype him up. He was, his company was on Shark Tank. It's called Nerd It Now. If you guys can't see,
Nerd It Now.
Yep. So what does your company do?
So Nerd It Now, we purchase, repair, and resell computers, phones, and tablets. And the thing that people walk away from, that's a pretty boring business. There's lots of them. But the thing that people remember is that we, yes, have a brick and mortar store, an actual physical location, but we have a mobile store that is kind of like a food truck model, but instead of an old bread truck, it's an ambulance that we call the motherboard.
What made you guys come up with that idea?
So when Vorhees started all of this almost 5 years ago, he was running it out of his apartment. Okay, and can you imagine showing up to a business address and it's an apartment complex? Like, yeah, I'm not walking in here. And so the vision was that to go from the apartment and exit there and have a mobile store. And so I don't really know why ambulance. It's kind of like regular doctor meets tech doctor. It's kind of the vision there. But just to stand out from the stereotypical food truck sort of look was what the ambulance was for.
And it kind of like represents that like help type thing, you know?
Yep.
Was that like the subliminal message with it?
Yeah, that's what happened along the way. People would say that the tech doctors are in, or heal your tech problems, which is synergistic with the ambulance type of message. So
you guys should have started wearing like doctor coats.
Like Malcolm and Uni, right?
Yeah.
Like we're gonna show up with like the quarantine suits and solve your tech problems. Yeah, it's a good idea. We should try that. We got to get green ones though.
Super branding.
You know? Yeah.
That would be cool though. What is your logo right now?
So the logo is just like a nerd, and it kind of has like a computer monitor and a thought bubble, which this kind of can create problems in branding because your center of gravity is not in the very center. But people love it's kind of like your Android green in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of just like a little nerd.
Did you guys come up with the logo, or how did that work?
Did it on Fiverr. Just let the Fiverr guy do it 5 years ago. Honestly,
really?
When you guys are overthinking your logos at the beginning phase, no, just keep moving. Like the logo doesn't matter. And if you want to change it along the way, like this one's evolved a little bit. Like this shadowing shouldn't even be here anymore.
And you probably paid super cheap for the logo too.
It was literally a $5 Fiverr.
That's all my logos that I've ever used have always come from Fiverr. $5, they come back in a day, give you all the different file types, everything. Yeah. It's lit. Yeah. I feel like for entrepreneurs, that's a secret website.
Fiverr's a great platform. Yep. We use Canva for a lot of things. Honestly, like people think that we use Google Sheets for most of our documents. People think that you have to get fancy with all this. No. Just use what you have, and then if it becomes a problem, figure it out. But
so how many years has it been that Nerd It Now has been like an idea and turned into what it is now?
Wow, so an idea far longer, but technically it's right around 4.5 years exactly. So this fall it'll be 5-year anniversary.
Damn.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Feels crazy. I mean, the journey's been nuts, and most of it, because I wasn't around at the very beginning, but most of it's just like heads down, repairing phones. First year was like $30K, and then second year was $90,000, then you get into the $140,000, $150,000s. And then really it wasn't until like I started working with Vorhees like 2-ish years ago, a little between 1.5 years and 2 years ago, that really things started to happen, because you got to just work and grind. And then that first media article comes, and you get some momentum, and then everybody thinks that you blockbustered this thing, but it's backed by all this work, right? And so it's been cool for the last year or two.
Are you guys like still physically fixing everything?
No, we have a team. So even when we're in California or when we're flying around speaker coaching, which is another thing we do for another business, we have historically...
We're going to talk about speaker coaching in a little bit too.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Historically, we had 2 younger technicians who are like store managers who can run the store. We're open 62 hours a week, who can run the store and manage all the customers and things when we're away.
And where's your store?
It's in Newport, so 1614 West Newport Pike. We're in the Movies 10 Shopping Center for people who are in the Delaware area, in the Wilmington area.
If you're interested in coming out.
Yeah, man, come on out. There's a shopping center there. We park the ambulance in the back, so you won't be able to see it. But yeah, it's
like you should have it out front.
I know, they won't let us because we can't have any of our company vehicles out front. It's a little wild.
Really?
But like that thing's basically a big billboard, so it sucks.
Yeah, I feel like, why not?
Because here's part of it is that the owners of like the landlord, they actually own the entire shopping center and the grocery store.
Oh.
So they want to prioritize their grocery store.
So it's taken away
traffic
from their business.
Yeah, so I totally understand, to be honest. Yeah, totally understand.
No, it makes sense. So now you guys are in your 5th year. What's like revenue looking like in the 5th year?
Yes, so
Because you said it started off what, like 30K?
Yep.
Pretty, good money. A lot slower than obviously probably what it is now.
Yeah. So I think I said something like 30 to 90, which is a little crazy. But it's been, I think there was a 30 to 90 jump between the apartment, and then we actually got not the space that we have now, but there was an intermediate brick and mortar space, which was like business in the front, and it was just really, really simple, much smaller than what we have now. There was about a 35 to 40% growth every year. So I think that 30 to 90 did happen because we got out of the apartment. But we're up to now between 200 and 250,000 in revenue per year. And when we
And that's just in one location.
One location. And we really are underutilizing the ambulance because it's only out there a few times per year instead of being out there all the time, serving like a true second brick and mortar location.
So then what's the plan on getting it out there more?
Yeah, great question. So this is actually what landed us on Shark Tank, is because we have a way to scale this business that does not involve popping up brick and mortar stores all over America. Everyone knows that's not the way. Big box stores and box stores in general are closing and dying.
Yeah, and rent is ridiculous.
Rent is never going down, exactly right. And then that's the thing with millennialism, like all the millennials move back to the urban centers actually, like they don't want land and they don't want a car. So, and that's where businesses need to be, so we're competing with actually like residential stuff now, right? So the way to scale this is because we have a mobile store, which is the ambulance, we can actually have the ability to set up Amazon locker style kiosks, where instead of dropping off your package to be shipped out for that day, you would drop off
your
laptop, your broken phone, your tablet, and then we would have an alert in the back end of our system. They'd pay, they'd enter their information, who they are, what's going on, and then we'd get an alert immediately, and one of the ambulances would be able to go and pick up the device. And it actually is a mobile repair store. So you have the ability to repair. One person's driving, you have a technician in the back. This ambulance can be going around servicing as many as 10 kiosks, a 1-to-10 ratio. And so that's what we pitched on Shark Tank. It got us all the way. So getting kiosks out there and then ambulances to service them is the scale plan.
Were they able to fund you on Shark Tank?
So we didn't get a deal, which is okay, which is actually...
I mean, I saw it. But...
yeah. Which is actually what we wanted. One of the hardest things to manage is in our Shark Tank journey, in not getting a deal. Most people are disappointed for us. They say, "Oh, we're so sorry you didn't get a deal," and it's like, no, you have no idea. Like,
you got publicity. You probably have other investors like looking to hit you up.
Oh yeah, it's been crazy. So supposedly it's $5 million worth of exposure, right? All the households at international ABC we rerun all the time.
It's crazy.
It feels more like 15 or 20 million, if that's what 5 is supposed to be. Like, it's been nuts. It's a telethon. Most days still, we have spikes. Every conversation is different. That's the thing I didn't expect. It goes blah 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 Shark Tank, and then everything's a yes. Like, you would only like really be interviewing us because of the Shark Tank thing, right? Like, that's just like it's like our blockbuster moment, right? So
yeah,
it's been cool.
So like, even when you're talking to investors, it's like, oh yeah, you need this money? Oh yeah, you're on Shark Tank? No worries, I got you. Write a check.
I wish. So investors are, maybe a friends and family round, which we haven't done yet, would be a little bit easier. But investors, no. So investors really, we've talked to enough, and even like Backstage Capital and these projects or these funds that invest in smaller projects, especially with underrepresented founders, they really want to see how much money it can make and get it out there and do it. And we don't have that yet. We're still in prototype form. And so we need to just get it out there. And I'll say one other thing before your next question, but what an investor really wants is for an entrepreneur to rub the sticks together. And think if you're gonna make a fire in the woods, right? Which I don't know how to do. But it's like you gotta rub these sticks together and make that bow and do all this crap, right? And here's so much hard work and so much hard work, right? And then you get a little spark and then you got a little flame, okay? And an investor wants to show up and just pour gasoline on that. When all the hard work was the entrepreneurs for years to get to that flame. You gotta prove that you can create enough money to have this little model that sustains itself, and they just want to show up and scale it.
Throw some kerosene on. Is that good or bad though?
It's good for them. It's their way of avoiding risk, because right now we're still technically ideation. We know it works because there's been a brand that's done this. They didn't have mobile stores. That's why we know this is going to work and be able to scale it, at least as nationwide as the plan. But they want to see how much money you're making now with this new idea and then rip it. And we don't have those numbers yet.
No.
So we got to get this pilot in Wilmington and prove that 10 kiosks can make like $700,000 per year.
And where would you set up the kiosk?
Yeah, so
Would it just be like on the corner of a...
yeah, it could be. So kind of like an Amazon locker, or think like we're a slightly upscale from like a Coinstar or a Redbox or a Minute Key. There's lots of different kiosk models out there that are very successful and work. Coinstar and Redbox, if you're familiar with them, it sold in 2016 for $950 million. Yeah, the brand was
And you're a
together.
more upscale version.
So they're outside of grocery stores and things where, you know, you might pour like $12 of change in or rent.
Yeah.
You don't have Netflix at home. So we're actually thinking that Wilmington's a really good location for it because we have a relationship with Barclays. So like high density, highly trafficked pedestrian areas within an urban center. So we're looking right out the window of Mike's awesome office, and we see, you know, there's 15, 20-story buildings right in the lobby of the mill. Right in the lobby of the community service building. Anywhere where you have hundreds, if not small digit thousands of employees that they break their phone over the weekend, they break their phone at night, and they know there's a Nerdit repair kiosk in the lobby of their employer. They show up at work, boom, drop it off at 9 a.m., it's repaired when they leave. So that's the focus.
Gotcha. So how do you define the employers and stuff like that then?
So what do you mean define that? Or like what's our
Like
target
your
avatar for...
Yeah. Because like you mentioned the mill, so would it be more like office space and co-working spaces and like hot startups, like companies that are highly intensive with technology?
Yeah, so it would be like, imagine in the lobby even of your building. It's not like just one company building. I mean, maybe if it's the whole company, that's one thing. But anywhere that has a kind of like a white collar sort of, you know, where your employees are making $40,000, $50,000 either average or minimum, but where everyone is guaranteed to have a smartphone, and if they break it, their instinct is not necessarily buy a brand new smartphone, right? Like we could find those locations in Greenville or Hockessin or Kennett Square where that's like your absolute end. But just your like regular corporate working class, and if it's a high enough density employer, that's our target.
Okay. And how much does it cost, if you don't mind me asking, for like creating each one of these little kiosks?
Yeah, okay, so the kiosks is, we can get them more cost effectively than most people because Marquivas lived in China for 5 years.
Okay.
And so we have the relationships with these manufacturers and these people who do supply chain management businesses in China.
And you have to also like create a whole like software system for it as well too, right?
Yeah, so the kiosks are not too problematic for us now. This whole coronavirus, getting things from kiosks is, or getting things from China is a whole nother conversation.
Fucking coronavirus.
Right? It's not great for anybody right now. Yeah, that's right. We're gonna trigger this recession too if we're not careful. But to your point, Mike, the software is actually the elephant in the room right now because that is supposedly valued at like several $100,000, and so we're working with a partner who could come in to do that at a reduced cost, but
because that's extremely expensive.
That's not cheap, yeah. And so we're doing raise options, like we're applying to business grants and trying to figure out how to not give away equity in order to fund this right now.
Have you guys already given up equity for other money?
We haven't. So a lot of people.
So that's good though.
Yeah.
All the money's in your guys' pockets.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people think that, like, when you have a good idea, or even when you're building a team, like, oh, go find venture capitalists or go find institutional investors. There are so many ways that you can get money and not give, even if it's just a point or two, like a percentage or two of your company. There are ways, especially today. And so we're exploring all of those before.
What are some ways that you guys have found?
Yeah, so you're supposed to always start with a friends and family route. Like, lots of people can get, depending where you come from. I mean, our family doesn't have it, but you can get, 10 to 25 to even, you hear stories of people raising like $100,000 from just people that they know, people who believe in them. Especially if you've been grinding on an idea for 5 years and or you're the people in your, it's not literally friends and family, just the people that you know. It could be a college professor who really believes in you. It could be someone who's in your community who's watched you do this and knows who you are. And it's kind of like that whole trusting in the jockey mentality, meaning like the horse is the business, right? But sometimes like this business fails and the jockey goes on to work on the next idea. That money has still fueled that, and there's people who believe in you. There's business grants.
Interesting analogy.
Yeah, believing in the jockey, and a lot of times people who want to invest in an idea, they do it just because they know that you've been successful in the past, or you failed a lot in the past, and you're not going to quit. So eventually, it's going to be the thing. Even if what you're working on right now isn't your, unicorn. Everyone's looking for a unicorn.
Yeah, of course.
Which is $1 billion company. So that's first thing, friends and family, just asking people for money, no equity, right? And usually those people have such a good relationship that they know they'll be looked after later. Okay, so then you have grants, you have business grants, and you have accelerator grants. Like, you can literally apply for different accelerator programs. They might give you 20 to 50 to maybe even 100,000 just to participate in that company. And so in the beginning phases of, say, Y Combinator, they were able to produce these machine-like startups. And these, I don't have the best example of what they produce, but they're the biggest name in accelerators. But just being able to say that they helped something go on to be the next unicorn is a big deal.
And they have a track record of producing a couple of them.
I'm pretty sure they do. I wish I knew. I usually try to have all this stuff
know.
memorized. I know there's some big ones at Y Combinator because they were the first ones. So.
Yeah, I don't know off the top neither, but I know on the previous episode where I had Gary Johnson on here, he talked about that.
Yeah, Gary's our guy. Actually, we don't get investor advice from many people, but Gary Johnson is one of them, so definitely look him up. What he's up to right now is the First Founders Accelerator, which, I mean, there's a whole... Go watch Mike's episode with Gary, because he talked all about that. So after friends and family, and after business loans and things like that, where you don't, like, business grants and things like that, not even loans. You could go out and get a loan, but a grant means you don't have to pay it back. Then they have what they call...
How do you get a business grant?
So like the Edge grant here is the best example. So Bryce and Joel got an Edge grant. So because of their affordable housing idea and all the momentum and them getting in Reinventing Delaware, winning that last year, there's a program here called the Edge Grant Program. It's an acronym. And I think there's multiple times throughout the year that 10 businesses, not nonprofits, are given a $50,000 check to execute this plan that they have. And they don't come back and say, did you do your plan? They're not asking for equity. It's just a $50,000 check. And they got one. And so that's awesome. And so there's a lot of those out there. Most people think you have to have a nonprofit to be eligible for a grant. It's not true. There's some out there that are for businesses. After that, you have what they call a convertible note. So convertible note is when you're given this money, and ideally you usually have to pay it back in like 2 to 4 years, or it becomes equity. It converts to equity. So you either have to pay this money back by like 8 to 10%, which the investor wins, because average gains in the stock market are 8%, right? So 8%
and that's not a risky portfolio.
And it can be risky, particularly right now, like record-breaking bull market.
Yeah.
And then I think there's some other options, but those are the primaries, and only then would you look at it, like, for example, an angel investor who takes a small bit of equity. And then finally, your institutional, your venture capitalists, those are the actual sharks, right? And
those are normally the people that you don't want to deal with.
Yep, because they want to take control of things unless you're doing everything that they say, and you actually aren't even really running your company anymore. And so even that stuff is to be avoided, if you can. Sometimes you need it. But
Yeah, sometimes it is needed in order to get to that next level, right? Do you think so?
100%, and especially how you worded that to get to that next level. Because usually you'll have, look at what Uber did, or we just worked with this company called Seismic that took on a $100 million investment. They do all these different raises, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that first raise is primarily what we're talking about, because once you can get through that first raise, and then say somebody throws a couple $100,000 at you or $1 million, usually your first raises are usually like 2 to 2.5 million. Every project is just that, right? Because in order to be successful, you have to think like this is a $1 billion company.
Yeah.
So that's how much money you need, right?
You gotta spend millions of dollars.
You gotta spend millions of dollars. And after that, after you go do what you said, that's really the game plan. Get this money and then go do what you said you were gonna do with this money. Stick to the plan. And then you can come back and maybe do like a $250 to $50 million raise. And then like if you look at Uber's series, they probably raised between like 100 and 250 million in their final one. And now this is where you're projected to be, multiple billion, exactly. So
That shit's crazy.
it's nuts. And if he had asked me that question 2 months ago, would not have been able to answer it. This is stuff that we had no clue about. And I act like I know what I'm talking about, but I've learned from Gary and Pedro Moore. That's another person you should have on this.
Pedro, I've talked to Pedro about it because me and him did at Startup Weekend like 5 or 6 years ago. Me and him created a company together.
Really?
Called Shell Capital, but it was for his company Funding Fuel.
Okay, yeah.
We had did a whole other separate idea, but pretty much the same thing. We created a logo and did like some shit on the back end and started talking to people, So like,
very cool.
We kind of helped him get some market research and everything, but it was just a dope experience.
Yeah.
And Pedro is the man. He's super smart.
Pedro is, yeah. He vets all the Shark Tank deals from Dave and John.
Does he?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so specifically in the Shark Tank journey, he's been a consultant and an advisor to us this entire time.
Wow.
Every single in the room handshake deal, just because they make a deal in the room on Shark Tank guys doesn't mean anything. He gets all he does the vetting process, like the due diligence for Dave and John.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I definitely got to have him on here. But so
sure.
let's get back to you. So now you're looking at the kiosk and everything. What does it take to get to that next level for you guys? Where you said you wanted to go like national,
Yeah.
and be able to have an ambulance, right?
Yeah.
And all over the place.
Ambulances everywhere. Yeah.
How much does an ambulance cost for you guys?
Yeah, so these are numbers that we don't. This is why I kind of like, in a hazy fashion, you can keep this on the show, in a hazy fashion kind of glossed over the fact that we have advantages for getting the kiosk. And same thing for the ambulance. It's comparable to food truck startup. So you need, for starting something with a concession window, and whenever you're retrofitting a vehicle, it can be as much as like $100,000. And if you know how to buy vehicles, if you have people in your Rolodex, you can do every 20, right?
Yeah, about that. So
Yeah. So if
that
you,
cost gets slashed a bit.
that's what it is. Yeah. Wait, should I back up a little bit? You think? I think we both saw it right away.
I think so too.
Yeah. And I'll just take it.
Pick where you feel comfortable.
Yes. And so this is. We don't really advertise how much it costs to get a kiosk from China, for example. Even if you knew how much we were paying, it would be really hard for you to get it because, again, in having a Mandarin-speaking business partner and someone who's lived in China for 5 years, we have the relationship. So the kiosk is no problem in terms of getting it in a cost-effective scalability way. But the ambulance, let's just say it's similar to the startup cost of a food truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's buying an old vehicle, like literally with this buzzsaw, like buzzing a hole in the side, like doing it yourself, or having Uncle somebody do it, which is what we did, right?
That's crazy.
Yep. And then
Gotta get it done.
That's what it is, yeah. And all the other things that come with retrofitting it. Food trucks need like all the stuff inside. We don't need like ovens and all that sort of thing, but ambulances are not cheap, so.
Yeah. How much does an ambulance cost?
Brand new ambulance is like $250,000. Yes, yeah.
What about like ones that you guys are like?
So
How about after you guys retrofit it?
Yeah, so you guys can go ahead and look, but literally the first two ambulances, because you're seeing V2, there was one that was from 1986. A Ford E350 1986 Baltimore Ravens tailgating ambulance. and it never worked.
That's classic.
Right?
And it never worked.
And it never worked. It never
Did you get
worked.
your money back?
They poured no. So when Jay and Marquivas, even before meeting me years ago, won second place at the Hen Hatch, $9,000 check, poured $7,000 into the ambulance for things like fixing an axle and fixing the radiator and all these other things. It never worked. So it was a big failure, and everybody was laughing about it to begin with, like, oh, this is never going to work, you idiots, and they could have just given up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But bought the second ambulance, which is only 10 years old, so it's a 2010, and this one works.
Nice.
It's part of the reason why we got it on Shark Tank. So.
And so now you guys know what it's like to buy some ambulances
We do.
and what it's like to retrofit it. So then what's the plan to get it national?
So the plan is to pilot it here. The ambulance thing is not too much of a snag. The thing that we're trying to figure out the most is having host partners understand the vision, the benefit that it brings
So
their
you have to have a
employees
host partner.
for the kiosk,
Okay.
right? So ambulances running around is a model in itself that's pretty good
Mhm.
because it's a moving billboard, and yes, it's an operational store, and it's something that people see, and it kind of looks food truck like, but it's different enough that that's why we use the phrase purple cow. I don't know if you're familiar with that Seth Godin concept.
Mhm.
So Seth Godin wrote a book called Purple Cow, and it is kind of like, I mean, Mac, I'm trying to think of an example that we both know. Do you know Nudie and Malcolm, the Lab Coat
Yeah.
boys? So here's a good example. So our friends, Malcolm Coley and Nudie Felton here locally, they run
At the Wind Factory.
At the Wind Factory, exactly. They run a digital marketing business. And when I hear digital marketing or marketing business, I don't care. It's like, I've heard of 10,000 of you. I don't care. But Malcolm and Nudie, they walk around with white lab coats on,
Mhm.
all right?
Great branding.
Great branding. And people walk right up to them and they say, who are you guys and what do you do, and tell me about these lab coats. And they say, well, we're Influencer Lab Media. And that's where the lab, you can see the crossover. It's like, oh, this is the lab coat. Oh, okay, I get it. Well, what do you do? We do digital marketing. And then they're like, well, what's the chemistry thing all about? And Malcolm's like, actually, I'm a chemist. And so the whole story has this full circle. But the Purple Cow element is that they've created this, and the ambulance is this for us, they've created something that stands out in the world from everyone else.
Mhm.
Mac from Carbertize kind of has it. There's no such thing as drivable billboards out there in the world.
Yeah.
So the ambulance has been that for us, for sure.
Gotcha. And so that's your standout thing that is going to
Yeah.
be able to take you nationwide.
That's the standout thing. So in terms of the scalability and figuring out ambulance things, they're a little bit easier. It's finding big brands like the Community Service Building or where the mill is or Barclays Bank or even like the CSC building, finding these people who they can see, finding these decision makers around a large, high density employer, corporate employer who can understand the value of having the kiosk in their lobby.
Mhm.
That's the harder sell.
Okay.
And it'll be a snowball, but we, for example, we don't have kiosk location number 1 committed yet, which is a problem, and we're working on that.
And obviously part of Shark Tank was to try to help all of that. You know what I mean?
100%.
So now that you guys didn't get the funding, and you're still trying to expand nationwide, of course.
Yeah.
What is, like, how are you going to do that? Are you going to take other money from other investors, or are you mainly just like going to build it up slowly with your guys' own capital?
No, we're looking for support for sure. So the thing that, after getting meetings with the mayor and talking to lots of funders, like actual funds like Backstage Capital in New York, and some people who have investor experience and investors themselves, is that we need to get it out there and show it. And the way that you do that is you need this bulletproof, robust business plan that looks so successful in this concept that Barclays will say yes. And it's a part of our EDGE grant submission. And everyone who will be a part of this success, yes, we'll give you a food truck exception permit so that the ambulance can park around the city. Things like that. Like, show us the business plan. And so honestly, in the 4 months since Shark Tank's been out, we've been cranking on this plan and trying to break it and show it to people and submit to grants and break it and just make this plan as good as possible. So it sucks, but in In the very early days, just get out there and make money. But when you don't, like, your one-page business plan is all you need. But in terms of a plan where you're taking maybe several $1,000,000, you need a really good plan. And you will not convince people that they're going to give you money otherwise unless they agree with your plan. So
how do you get a really good plan? Or how do you make a really good plan? What does it look like?
Yeah, well, it looks like we don't even know. This is one of our weaknesses, is neither one of us is document people. So what we do, and this is one thing that's really important for entrepreneurs, is we only take advice from the people who've done this themselves and they know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and this is where, like, the Rob Herreras and Martin, who's helping us with the software, these guys have built 10 companies each, right?
Yeah.
And they know what it's like to write a plan that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars one day to get 1 million, right? And so you got to put it in the hands of people who've done it and really know, because this is a rare thing to find people who have the experience. You got to look at the people who've done what you're trying to do,
and get knowledge from them.
Yep,
and advice.
Exactly, and they'll give it and they'll help, especially if you've invested in the relationship. If you cold email people, it's not going to work, but people are there to help.
What are some of the parts that suck? Like you had just recently said, you're like, oh, some of it sucks. Like, is making the plan suck? Or like, what are some war stories that you guys have had with this? You know what I mean? So like, give the audience some. We've talked a lot of good stuff. You know what I mean? And the potential that can come from it. What are some of the negatives that have?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things, Mike, is making sure, I think, that your team, and like if you're a co-founder out there or you're a core team, making sure that you have an overlap of skill sets and you can see each other's vision, but making sure that you can cover as many of the different skill sets avenues between the 2 or 3 of you. There's almost always just 2 people. Mm-hmm. I know like Warby Parker's got 4 and there's some that are 3. 3 almost always sucks because 2 get along more than the third, and they get booted, like what happened with Facebook and Snapchat, right? But making sure that like usually there's this person who's good with people and does business development and sales and is a visionary, and then one person who can build the technology and likes the numbers and the spreadsheets. Like look at Carver Ties. Like we're talking a lot about Mac and some of these local entrepreneurs. You never see Greg. You know, I think Greg is the software guy, or like James and Surrey. Even though Surrey can walk the walk. Yeah. Talk the talk. Surrey's
like both.
He's like both, and deep down he's the computer scientist. James seems like I know Surrey more than James, but I guess James is more of the spokesperson and more like the biz dev and that sort of side. But you need to make sure that with your team you are different enough so that you can cover everything. And one of our weaknesses, Marquivas and I, is that neither one of us likes to write these grants and business documents. And even though he's got an accounting degree on top of his computer science, like just money stuff is not like money flow and this and that. We don't like to keep up with the bookkeeping. So the pain points are delegating these things out. So as we grow, we're not sitting there like regretting our day because we're filling it with stuff that we don't want to do. Mm-hmm. So that's one, like figuring that out always. Always be willing to know that whatever's ahead you have no clue, and just it's always this learning. Like whatever you have in front of you right now, like that feeling, if you're destined for greatness, that's never going to change. You're always okay, you summited this mountain and then there's this next mountain, right? That's definitely how it's been. This whole venture world and investor world has been there's a lot to learn. That's like almost its own ecosystem and its own language. Because you could grow a company forever and never, like a Cliff Bar.
Never know exactly everything about the company.
Certainly that, and specifically around investing and taking on investors. You could be like a Cliff Bar who never gave away $1 of equity, right? And he doesn't know anything about like investing. Right? They almost gave away some of it. Trying to think. So the question was, what are other issues and pain points and problems, right?
Some negatives that have come about. There's some war stories, like any instance where you guys like got ripped off by someone, or you know what I mean, like because dealing with all this stuff, like and networking and trying to get to that next level, whatever level it is in business, there's always someone that's trying to bring you down.
Yeah. So we haven't necessarily had a war story in the fashion that like someone has maliciously done something or targeted us or anything like this. But on the way back from Shark Tank, I'll give you this war story. So you got to make sure that if you're going to explore things and invest down some avenue or go to conferences and spend money to make money, that you're not cutting yourself so thin that if something happens, the whole boat sinks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so when we went out to Shark Tank, we got this kiosk sent from China, last minute, wrapped it, invested in all that, and then we took time off, had the young technicians run the store, we drove all the way out to San Diego, and then on the way back, it was fine, we made it. Yeah, it was a nuts ride, 3,000 miles. The ambulance wouldn't start, like the day after Shark Tank. We're in, LA, right? And so wouldn't start. We actually had to call a tow truck for the ambulance. So they towed up, this is broad daylight, like right next to, I think it was like Huntington Beach. And they actually dropped the ambulance, one of the axles, off this tow truck. And then broke the tire rod, created even more damage. So then, it's 2 days after Shark Tank, it's my birthday, we're literally curbside all day, like waiting for this ambulance to be repaired, right? And then... Hating life, we get into, finally gets repaired, get in, drive to Denver, like straight. We stopped to see, actually our friend in Vegas, got taken out to lunch. Then go to Denver, I'm driving like all night, it's sunrise, and I almost stopped at Red Rocks during sunrise. Coming back from Shark Tank, after not getting a deal, after being broken down, getting everything repaired, we're like sleeping in the ambulance.
I need a positive here.
Yep. So get in. I don't pull over at Red Rocks. We're just getting into Denver, and then I hear this. It was like this gunshot from the hood, and Jay and Marquivas are in the back sleeping, and Kristen and the baby are back there too. It's like this ping, and almost like somebody had thrown a wrench on the inside of the engine, right? And then right away, I can feel it, like my power steering is gone. And I didn't know, I'm not a car guy, but I didn't know that power brakes were a thing. I can't brake, I can't turn, and this is on the interstate, right? Like right at sunrise. We pull over, and
Jesus Christ.
Right, serpentine belt had popped. So then, as people know, serpentine belt had popped, and then the AC, some AC pump had been messed up, and even more car problems. And then we find out that $9,000 from an account had been taken out of a business account. All right. So here we are in the hole, investing into Shark Tank. We have multiple layers of all these car problems and almost $10,000 worth of financial fraud. So all this looks like a $30,000 hole. We literally couldn't even pay for the repairs in Denver. We had to stay in a motel overnight and in Denver with no money. And leave the ambulance at this shop because we stretched ourselves too thin. Yep, we stretched ourselves too thin and literally had to stay. It might have even been 2 nights because we had no money. We couldn't. All between the three of us couldn't pay for these repairs because of the theft and cutting too thin. We needed an emergency fund. We just drew ourselves too thin. So
Jesus,
that's our biggest war story. I think we made it home. But a little bit more in the hole. Yeah, we made it home. A little bit more in the hole.
Did somebody help you pay or?
I'm trying to think what we did.
They cut you a deal or something?
No, they definitely did not cut us a deal, and we read all the negative reviews. We ended up in the wrong shop. It's like this predatory shop because everybody's coming through Denver, and they just prey on these people.
Damn.
And they charge us all this money, like way more than it should have been. I'm trying to think what we even did. I think somebody transferred us like $3 or $4 grand, and we're able to get out. But it was an ugly couple days.
That's a hell of a story, especially after just being on Shark Tank. You're like,
yep.
Felt somewhat good. I mean, just being on TV and being there and everything, even though you didn't get the deal.
Yeah.
And then it was just fucking downhill from there.
Because we were convinced we were going to walk out of there with a deal. Like, we were going to be okay with not getting one because we knew it was going to be good, but like, it was kind of crushing because
why did they say no?
Too early. Same thing as the investors. We got to get out there and show that it's making money. It's too early for them. And they made us look good on TV. They said, you guys don't need us. Go out there and do it. They didn't have to. Because they asked us questions for an hour, and then they put 8 minutes on TV. So they can make us look stupid. They can make us look great. They made us look great.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Were they assholes while you were like in there?
Yeah. The 2 biggest questions we get was, were they mean and were you nervous? And we actually weren't nervous because we were paired with producers to the point where we were ready. Like, coached us and prepped us, and we created our own pitch. We get a lot of questions like, did you create that pitch or did they? It's like, no, we created that pitch. We had help to Shark Tankify it, but it was our pitch. I remember when they were making us up and putting makeup on and all these
did
things.
A whole makeup
the whole
thing.
thing. Oh, we did a full rehearsal. We were right on set of Sony Picture Studios next to it was Silicon Valley, Spider-Man, Shark Tank, like all in alphabetical order. It was crazy. We're being carted around, escorted to the bathroom. We're treated like talent. We had our own trailer, like film trailer, our own food. Yeah, it was cool.
That's sick.
It was awesome. Full day rehearsal with the Shark Tank team, and then after we rehearsed the day before we taped, some teams they got skewered.
Mm-hmm.
They had to change around their pitch last minute. We literally got a whole ovation from the room. They didn't stand, but a room filled with probably like 50 Shark Tank people, like all the producers, rows and rows of like card tables, right? And they said, "Okay, guys, see you tomorrow." Like no feedback. And then waited around all day, barely prepped on that Friday, and then got all ready. And I just remember feeling like eerily calm. We're sweating when we were in there. There's some shots on TV of me definitely sweating. But they weren't assholes, they were nice. They're more like Sharky to each other.
Really?
They cut each other off, yeah. They make them seem like they're assholes on TV, but they were nice to us. Kevin O'Leary is Canadian. Herzebek is Canadian. Canadians are...
It's super
they're
nice.
They're not mean people, yeah.
That's dope. So, one of the questions that has been looming in my head too, how did you guys get onto Shark Tank?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually can talk about this, whereas some of the like internal
You said you can?
process, we can.
Okay.
Okay, so Shark Tank's been around for 11 seasons. We were actually on season 11, and they have this team that goes around the country all year long, just searching for ideas. And so you can go out to one of these open calls. We did. We went out for Louisville, Kentucky, the week before the Kentucky Derby in April. They have an open call there at the University of Louisville. And we read about the lines and the people who camp out, and we showed up a couple hours early, and we were number 187 in line. And it was
Jeez.
tense, yep. And there was plenty of people behind us. We think there was 350 people there.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and
It's
so
really like that.
it's really like that. Yeah, it's really like that. And they said if you're over 150, come back at noon. So we got there at like 8 a.m. Came back at noon, and then we finally get into this room, and they gave us like the rundown. And so they said you're going to walk into this room, and there's going to be tables throughout the room. You're going to pitch to one judge, and you're going to get 1 minute. And if they don't like your idea, you're out. Like it's only one person. It's a little nuts, right?
What do you think separates the pitches?
Yeah, you got to be dynamic. You got to be exciting. A lot of people are so nervous that their nerves come off through their pitch and their communication. You got like the more energy that you can show and the more storytelling you can provide. Like, what did you give up to make this happen? They wanted a lot of that. Because after our 1 minute pitch, she actually asked us 5 minutes worth of questions. Our judge, Liz. Shout out to you, Liz. You're awesome. And took a whole page filled with notes. Because how the open calls work is the traveling team has to take the pitches that they were moved by and pitch those of their own ideas that resonated with them, pitch those ideas to the producers. So Liz had to go sell us in LA. And that's what she did. And they said, if you don't hear anything from us in 2 weeks, then you didn't advance. And 2 weeks went by, and it was a Friday, and we're like, wow, we didn't hear anything. How can this be? The pitch went great. We're like literally slamming phones on the ground and being as dynamic as possible. This is why we started Nerd It Now. Like speaking, like going back to back, kind of like dueling, like tag team.
After you got it though, did they say like the slamming, like the extra shit is what they really liked?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the story and then like the energy and how dynamic. Exactly right. You got to think like a movie star when you're pitching. Like how can you be this dynamic? And then we got an email.
How can you stand out?
Yep, exactly. How can you stand out? And then we got an email at 5 o'clock 2 weeks later on that Friday because we did it on a Monday, 2 full business weeks, or it was like 12, 13 days, and it said you've advanced to the second round. And we didn't read the email, and then we had to do all this other crap within 7 days. I probably can't tell you about it, but it got nuts from there.
No
then we
way.
got paired with producers, and we started to kind of understand that we're advancing, and unless we messed up something, we were going to keep going. That was cool.
Damn. So now what is like the exact next step for Nerd It Now?
Yeah. So, for example, we submitted so many different things. If we could get 50 grand to finish up the software and get a couple more kiosks,
How many do you have right now?
We just have the one prototype one.
Okay.
And it's not even out there. So finishing up the software, getting a commitment on kiosk host location number 1, getting more commitment letters from more kiosk host partners. We're working on this certification so that we can recycle more computers, and then build this workforce development program to help us employ this whole scale plan. We're working on all these other pieces that are in this machine that aren't even actually a part of the business model, but again, the recycling certification and the workforce development program, like there's all these efforts. It's crazy.
And all these things you didn't even know you needed going into it.
Exactly right. So it's all over the place. We're definitely really scattered. And it's crazy. It's crazy. Be along for some crazy stuff.
Being an entrepreneur and being in this business, can you say you've become a fast learner?
You have to be a fast learner. And you have to be willing to know where your weaknesses are and only really try to learn and invest in things where you're a good fit and you enjoy it and you like it and like that's your skill set lane. And then have your co-founder or delegate it to subcontractors or virtual assistants. And don't grit your teeth and spin your wheels in the mud at stuff that you shouldn't be trying to learn. That's why I left engineering behind. Like I was asked to do stuff that I didn't want to do and I hated like that. Everything's hard, but you gotta be doing stuff that's in your skill set.
Yeah, exactly. What you're best at.
Yep,
and then become the best at doing those things.
Exactly right. It's like the Gary Vee thing. Punt that stuff. Punt your weaknesses and triple down on the strengths. And then the other thing is that like being okay to fail. Like we've gotten a lot of no's, even since Shark Tank. Then we could just quit and then live on this Shark Tank fame for that. But that sucks. It's like you gotta just keep going and don't quit.
You gotta, what was it, the purple, like do exactly what you plan on doing?
Yeah. The purple cow thing is just how to stand out, and then you gotta maintain that forever.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Mix them up.
No, it's okay. Well, you might have also been thinking about like the do what you said you were gonna do type stuff.
Yeah,
which is when people give you money, especially if you need to go back to them, they're like, well, what did you do with the money? Yeah.
True. Well, thank you for coming on.
Appreciate you, man.
And sharing your story with everyone.
Yeah, man.
Shit was dope.